to give. That's okay. We're recording, of course, which is awesome. Tom Andersen is on Zoom with us today. Wasn't able to be here in person, which is great with Zoom technology. That's amazing nowadays. So we will then have self-introductions with each one of the House members. And then we have some prepared questions for each one of the candidates. And we will basically go down the line and then back. If a candidate says anything or references their opponent, either by name or saying my opponent this or my opponent that, the opponent will have a 1 minute rebuttal period to address that comment. Other than that, if a candidate does not address their opponent by name or otherwise, then we're going to keep on down the line. Then we will finish with a closing remark from each one of the candidates. And then we will move on from the House candidates to Senate candidates. Okay. Any questions from there? Candidates, everyone's good? Awesome, perfect. We are going to real quickly just start out with the introductions of the candidates. And Tom Andersen, why don't we just start off with
Thank you very much. I apologize for being here by Zoom, but my wife has some susceptibilities that I want to make sure everything is good in our household. I came out here from Chicago in 1973 to go to law school. I loved it. Why would I want to be anyplace else? I've been a resident of Oregon since then. I've worked in Salem since 1988, and I've lived in Salem since 2003. I am a lawyer by profession, and I have been a city councilor for 2 terms, starting in 2015 and continuing up till last month when I resigned to run for this position. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Tom. TJ's not here, so we will move to Paul, please.
Correct. Thank you. I'm Paul Evans, running for another term as state representative from House District 20, which includes Monmouth, Independence, West Salem, and parts of South Salem. I currently have been nominated by the Democratic, Independent, and Working Families Party for another term. And I'm just looking forward to the opportunity to be here to try to see what people want to talk about.
Thank you, Paul. Dan?
Yeah, good morning. I'm Dan Farrington, running as a candidate for House District 20, West Salem, South Salem, Monmouth, Independence. I was born and raised in Newport, Oregon. I'm a 3rd generation business owner. I started Sunrise Medical Consultants years ago. We do independent medical exams throughout the state of Oregon and Washington. I have 16 employees. I started this company from scratch. So I know how to build businesses and grow in this economy, in the struggles of this economy. I married my wife, Linda. We raised 6 children, all 6 graduated from South Salem High School, all 6 college graduates. 5 of the 6 are married. The last one's getting married next June, and I have 6 granddaughters. So life is a little busy with all that. I've been a coach for 40 years. I started when I was 21 years old. Coaching high school sports, moved to Salem 30 years ago and started at South Salem High School and helped build their youth programs and their high school programs and involved in kids my whole life. Also, I'm a mentor at Union Gospel Mission for the last 5 years. So I've dug deep into the homelessness and how to mentor people through the New Life Fellowship to their program and to help homeless get back on. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Kevin?
Buenos días, damas y caballeros. Mi nombre es Kevin Mannix. Soy candidato para la legislatura. I'm being careful with my Spanish this morning. My name's Kevin Mannix. I'm a candidate for the legislature. Viví 7 años en Sudamérica. I lived 7 years in South America, in Ecuador, Panama, y Bolivia. In Ecuador, Panama, and Bolivia. Pero fue un jovencito. I was a little kid. Entonces, no hablo mucho en español, pero puedo conversar con los votantes. So I don't speak a lot in Spanish, but I can converse with the voters. I mentioned this at the beginning because we have a growing Latino community here in Salem and Kaiser, and it's important for us to reach out to that community. One of the reasons I'm a candidate for the legislature is I think we Republicans need to strengthen our relationship with all of the community, including the Latino community. I have had my own law firm in Salem for 36 years on State Street. I also served for many years in the state government Some people forget the past. I shouldn't be talking so much about that, but I was an assistant attorney general for Oregon in the trial division and then in the appellate division. And Susanna and I were in Guam for 2 years, where I was an assistant attorney general for the U.S. territory of Guam. Susanna, who is still a nurse at Salem Hospital, has been a nurse throughout her marriage, was a civilian nurse for the U.S. Navy back there. We're both into service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Hello, my name is Anthony Medina. I'm running for Oregon House District 22. I grew up in Jervis. It's a small rural farm working town. I was an FBLA kid growing up. I was raised by my grandparents who taught me the value of hard work. I was the first in my family to graduate from high school, first to go to college. I attended Western Oregon University. My junior year, I was selected as the National Trio Pound Student of the Year. Had an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C., study for Center for Government, and intern with a member of Congress. I came back to Western Oregon University for my senior year, where I graduated Public Policy Student of the Year and valedictorian in my class. I later went to Stanford and got my master's degree in higher education policy. I was curious as I wanted to know why students like me growing up weren't being reflected in post-secondary institutions. I came back to Oregon. My first job was working in the state's chief financial office. And I've dedicated my career to education and opening doors of opportunity for Oregonians.
Thank you, Tracy.
I am Tracy Kramer, running in House District 22. That's Woodburn, Jervis, Brookston, North Salem. I was born and raised actually born in the house that I grew up in, raised in and graduated from Jervis High School. During high school, I was very community helping with a lot of volunteer efforts within the community. I also grew up working in the community fields with my mom, my small business, produce and butt off. My dad was a logger until that didn't work out so well for him. Sure at that point. So that and I work elsewhere, but still a small business. So I have a long line of small business ownership in my history. My grandparents were all farmers and small business owners in the district as well. Graduated from Jervis, went on to be dual for about a year. Moved on from that into trade school. Still assisting for about 10 years. We now live still in the district, 3 small kids and business owners as well.
Thank you, Tracy. So now we're going to get into some questions. We have 3 questions prepared for each candidate. We'll start from the top again with Tom, and then go down the line, and then we'll push the order back. Each candidate has 1 minute to respond. Try to respond within that minute. And Zachary does have some cards here for time. There'll be a red that says enough, and then I think there's a yellow that says you're getting close. Is that right? Good enough. With that, let's just jump into it real quick. Oh, one last thing. After the 3 questions, I forgot to mention, each candidate will have an opportunity to ask their opponent a question, in which case there will be a 1 minute response to each one of those questions as well. If the opponent is here. In some cases, that is not the case at this point with the House group, so we're moving forward. Here we go. Quick question, and Tom, this will be for you first, and same question for everyone, and I can repeat it as we need it. With tough economic times looming ahead, with the onset of possible recession, small businesses may be forced to consider cost-cutting exercises, including reduction of staff hours and or layoffs. How would you, as a member of the Oregon Legislature, fight for employees and employers to ensure their businesses are best equipped to make it through turmoil economic times? Tom?
Small businesses, whoops. Am I unmuted?
You can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Small businesses are the backbone of our economy and our lifestyle and our lives here in Oregon and Salem, and that includes House District 19, which includes many businesses up and down the Commercial Liberty Strip, as well as in Southern Salem. We need our communities, our businesses to bounce back. From that perspective, we need to incentivize businesses to stay. We need to incentivize businesses to grow. We need to work together so both businesses and their employees will be able to continue to live and work here in Oregon. And as a legislature, I will work with all parties to make sure that this happens, that we can keep the Oregon dream and lifestyle alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. TJ is not here, so we move on to Paul, please.
Okay, we have 1 minute. Is that correct?
1 minute, yes, sir.
So I think it's a very important question, given the fact that we're going into a time where we have a $3.4 billion quote unquote surplus, but we're also looking at a very likely recession coming down the pike in terms of all the things that have been going on in the last 3 years catching up with us. So the answer is, what I would do is what I've done already. I would continue to try to find ways that on one side of the ledger, we can provide better infrastructure, more consistency, better workforce in terms of ready for work skilling, and trying to find ways that the state can actually provide a little bit more flexibility like we did during COVID in terms of implementation of the CAT tax and other things like that. On the small business side of the ledger, as a grandson of a dairyman and the son of a guy who ran a business for 38 years in Independence, trying to help people with hearing, I would continue to try to target tax cuts where they can work, and work with my Democratic colleagues that are a little perhaps against tax cuts to recognize that those we put in place actually do have an importance, and try to protect and make sure we don't lose ground. Sometimes that's actually more important than coming up with something new. That would be my approach.
Thank you. Dan?
Yes, thank you for that question. Actually, the last 2 years, we really ran into that same exact thing as we're talking about in this question. Is the challenge of how do we stay in business? How do we manage our staff? How do we keep people engaged to be successful? And we have to make sure that we have tax relief. We have a gas tax that's outrageous, so the products come in the back door are very expensive. How can we lower those costs? I'd find ways to lower costs in our taxes on gas, but also relief for the business owner, whatever that is. Also tax credits, whatever, things to lower the overhead so people can keep them engaged and working. Again, it is a tough time being business owners and having our own business. Let's allow them to do the job that they know how to manage their own staff, instead of having the government tell them how to manage their own staff. But we need to help our small business. They are our future. That's how we grow in this economy. And thank you for time's up.
Thank you, Dan. Kevin?
Good morning. What we need, first of all, is we need a state government and a legislature that tells the state bureaucrats to pare back on the bureaucracy, push back. How many times do we have to fill out paper forms on the computers, the equivalent? And we ought to be pushing the agencies to simplify and restrict the amount of documentation that they require from businesses. The second thing we need to do is to start giving tax credits to businesses that are being obligated to do things to help their workers. It's a real cheap shot for the legislature and the governor to say, you will do this for your workers and you will pay for it. How about if you do this for your workers, you get a tax credit that is, will reduce your Oregon income tax for the expense of doing it. We ought to be creative and novel in that approach to say, thank you for taking care of your workers, and let's reduce the tax burden on you for doing so. That would require a legislative directive. It will require a governor that will sign off on that kind of legislation. So ease back on the bureaucracy, and in some times ease back on the funding of certain state agencies.
Kevin, Anthony?
Thank you, Jeff. I really like this question because it gets to the heart of why we must support both. I believe it's a zero-sum game, or it's not a zero-sum game, employers and employees, and when we serve both constituencies. We as Oregonians are successful when we work together. I learned from my grandparents and my single mom that education was the pathway to success. For me, in my life experience, education brought me so far, but workforce development brought me the other way. And that's where I'm passionate in meeting our constituents and our communities where it's important. turbulent economic times are not good for anyone. They're not good for small businesses. They're not good for employees or employers or for the local economy. In the legislature, my focus will be on uplifting House District 22. I'm an optimistic person, and I believe when we come together, we can solve all problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Can you read the question?
With tough economic times looming ahead, with an onset of a possible recession, small businesses may be forced to consider cost-cutting exercises, including reduction of staff hours and or layoffs. How would you, as a member of the Oregon Legislature, fight for employees and employers to ensure their businesses are best equipped to make it through turbulent economic times?
Thanks, Jeff. So being a small business owner, and during the last handful of years of COVID, our business was hit severely. We took about a 40% pay cut, and did not have government help throughout that. So this is a question that hits close to my home. You know, being a small business owner, I don't believe that owners are really looking for a handout. I think they're very hardworking individuals that are really the backbone of our communities. And I would be in very much support of making sure that hidden tax and cat tax are either removed or I'm definitely not in support of those. And I think as a culture in Oregon, we've done a very poor job of supporting our businesses, our small businesses. And I think it's a huge disservice, which is why we're also seeing a lot of them, unfortunately.
Tracy. So Tracy, we will start with you on the next question. We'll come back down the line. The question is, as a member of the Oregon Legislature, how work with its leaders to ensure their voices are heard and legislation have a direct impact on their businesses and or employees?
Yeah, so great question. And actually, in the last 6 months, I believe that I have shown this as I have been campaigning. I have been in almost, I can't say all of the rooms, but the majority of the rooms that have been in my district where there are business owners, the Salem Chambers, the Oregon Ag, the Farm Bureau. I've been in all the rooms. I really don't believe that you're going to know the issues at hand with businesses and businesses unless you're in those rooms having those conversations. Unlike my opponent, I haven't seen him and haven't shown up at a lot of things. And I think that's just doing a huge disservice. And I don't believe that if you are not working now, I don't know that you would be working later.
So because the candidate was identified, Anthony, you have a rebuttal opportunity here before actually answering the question, your choice.
Yeah, I can take a rebuttal. I'm married, raising 3 kids. I work at 8 to 5 job with the state legislature or with the state of Oregon. I cannot mix any campaign work with my work. And so anytime I have events, I'm using my vacation I need to do. I can assure this folks in House District 22 and in this community that I've dedicated a substantial amount of my time and to serving this community. I've been serving on a school board for the last 5 years while raising a family, and it gets down to balancing campaign work, raising a family, and being an elected official.
So with that, Anthony, now the question is posed to you. Same question. I'm happy to repeat it if you'd like.
Yes, please.
As a member of the Oregon Legislature, how would you work with business leaders in your district to ensure their voices were heard on legislation which would affect directly their businesses and or employees?
I'll be a representative that always works with stakeholders and communities impacted by any proposed legislation. I've always been a person that leads with an open door policy with constituents, and that's business leaders, individuals, businesses, and folks working in and around my district. When it comes to working with the business community, that means this chamber, individuals here today. I want to see you, I want to work with you, and I want to meet you at your businesses. I strongly believe that advocating for small businesses shouldn't be a partisan issue, and this chamber can be assured I will represent them in the legislature.
Thank you, Kevin.
For the 36 years that I've had a law firm in Salem, I've been a member of the Salem Chamber of Commerce, and I served 6 years on the board of directors of the Salem Chamber. Now that I'm reaching out to the Kaiser community and practicing some law in that area, I've become a member of the Kaiser Chamber of Commerce. Excuse me. I'm a great believer in communication and listening, and during the 10 years that I did serve in the legislature ages ago, the key thing that I did was I listened to all members of the community. We sometimes disagreed, but we always engaged in a civil conversation. We tried to understand one another, and I learned so much from my constituents, which helped me solve problems. I am the author of more successful legislation than any legislator in Oregon history. And the way I got there was by listening to folks, identifying a problem, working up a solution, bringing people together and compromising, and not bills that passed 31-29, bills that passed 50-10. The idea is to have results that work for the community, and you get there by listening to the community.
Kevin?
Thank you. Well, this is kind of what we're doing here, is being in, belonging to chambers. I belong to the Salem Chamber, Kaiser Chamber, Monmouth Independence Chamber. I've attended all those and engaged in business owners, but also in Business Alliance in West Salem and actually in Monmouth. And again, I use the phrase iron sharpens iron. We're in the same room with people that are doing the same business. We learn from each other, and we have to work at it, and we have to be engaged. And that's something I do every day. Also being in sports and coaching, I have to go out into the community and find out for donations and those type of things. We hear a lot of things from different business owners. So I'm engaged on a daily basis with that, with all the organizations I belong to. Also being at the UGM, understanding what's happening there and be engaged in that community. So as living in this city and this community for 30 years, it's all about asking the next question.
Thank you, Dan. Paul?
Yeah, the dirty little secret is that once the campaign is over, if I'm reelected, I will be the Democrat that Republicans talk to, because in the caucus, there are only a few moderates left. And over the last several years, even though it's not talked about, moderating some of the goofy ideas my caucus comes up with is pretty much job one. Now, in terms of working with small businesses, again, I've been a member of the Monmouth Independence Chamber since I was mayor, except for times I had to go fight a war. Other than that, from time to time, I've been a member of the Salem Chamber. I know that in the past, we actually passed a piece of legislation specifically because it was your priority, changing the nature and the structure of the transit system in terms of appointees versus elected. My anticipation is I will continue to try to do everything I can to make sure that the business climate continues to be as good as we can make it, and I will continue to be your voice in the caucus.
Paul, TJ?
Thanks. You know, I have had a chance to travel around the other states, my son with baseball. And one of the things that strikes me is when I come back from another state, I realize just how poor Oregon is. And it really bothers me. Families in this state do not have economic security. And one of the things that I've noticed is that we've got an abundance of natural resources and natural beauty here. We should not be as poor as we are. And we need to do a better job of making sure that our communities around the state have the economic security they need. And it's out meeting with businesses and finding out, what do you need to expand? What do you need to grow your business? One of my favorite answers came from a meeting like that. I believe it was Tina Kotek asked a group of businesses here in this room, said, what do you need? What do you need from me to pass to help you guys in business? And it was John Miller who said, you know what I need? Just don't do anything. Just stay out of my way. I'll take care of my employees. I'll take care of my property. Just stay out of my way and I'll take care of the rest. And that was a great answer. So it's meeting with you, finding out what barriers you need to remove so you can expand your business and hire and continue to support your employees that work for you.
TJ, Tom? You're muted.
What I really need is a small business computer operator who can tell me how to work these things. First of all, I would actively seek out relationships with businesses. As an attorney for SAFE for over 20 years, I represented small businesses in trials all the time, and I learned how they operate in that. We need to hear all voices. That's what I did as a city council. I listened to everybody. If you gather as much factual information as you can get from small businesses, their situations with their business and with their employees, it helps you reach a consensus view of what needs to be done to move things forward. And that's what I would do. I would actively seek out communication. I've done that with the chamber leaders in the past, and I would continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So this next question, we're going to start the rotation over. Tom, we'll start with you. Tracy will end at that end as well. Two-part question. What do you feel is the most pressing issue in the district you're running for? Is first question, first part of that question. Second part is, what action are you prepared to take in order to address your constituencies' concerns? Tom, we'll start with you again.
Thank you. Well, in the city council, we did a survey of the citizens and to ask them what they viewed was the most important issue. And the most important issue that came back that they viewed, and I agree with them, is the situation with affordable housing and homelessness in our communities. As a counselor, I helped compile a list of almost 1,500 beds that are available on a nightly basis. We also worked extremely hard to incentivize developers to build affordable housing by giving them tax incentives, by giving them, selling them surplus city property for $20 for a big piece of property. So that's what I would do. I would work hard. I would seek out other opinions and do what we can to address that problem. It's a national problem, but we have to take care of it at this level. And I think I was successful in doing that on the council. I'd be successful in doing that in the legislature.
Thank you, Tom. TJ?
You know, I was born and raised in the district that I'm running for. And I will tell you, I can't remember a time when I've seen more alarm signs outside of people's houses or beware of the junkyard dog on the other side of the fence signs. And those are indications to me that people don't feel safe in their homes. And I believe that safety in our homes is something that we shouldn't take for granted, and something that as elected officials we need to do a better job of providing for our local communities so that residents can feel safe in their homes. And I believe that safety in House District 19 is something that's on a lot of people's minds. If you read the message boards on the Nextdoor app, that's continually being brought up about car break-ins. As we've gone door to door, that's one of the things we've been hearing on people's doorsteps, is not feeling like that you could park your car in your driveway, which is just, it's just too bad. I've never seen it before in this area, and it's an increasing problem.
Thank you, TJ. Paul?
So I'm an American, so instead of one, I want to claim 4 pressing issues that right now need to be dealt with. The first is with education, we need to stop the hypocrisy, which we took the first step of this last year to try to figure out how to improve actual education instead of made up statistics on whether graduation rates or this or that, because we actually require 24 credits, only one of 14 states to do that. We need to figure out and stop the nonsense and figure out what we are going to teach and how we're going to fund it. Number 2, we need to continue the reforms on public safety. I agree on public safety. That's why I actually took on reforming emergency management, setting up a new department, also making the fire service and forestry more able to actually help with wildfires, response, recovery. That's actually why every public safety advocacy group is actually pushing me. The third and fourth things we need to do is figure out how to do homelessness in a way that actually makes sense for the next phase. And the most important critical aspect is, how do we govern together? And that's the most important thing, because if we can't do that, we can't do anything else.
Thank you, Paul. Dan?
Well, he used 4, I'll use 2. And education, I think, is probably one of the main ones, because we need to prepare people to go out in the workforce. And we need to start early. We need to get out of the social from K to 5. We don't need to talk about social issues. We need to teach education of reading, math, arithmetic. We need kids at fourth grade level to read fourth grade level. And then continue that all the way through high school. And also make accountability and discipline throughout those years, so they're prepared to go out when they graduate to work. Because that's the problem right now. They can't hire people because they're not educated enough, or they don't know how to work. That's what K through 12 is supposed to be about, is educating them how to read, write, but also know how to work. So our workforce has more opportunities to go out there, so we can reach every kid's potential. The goal is to reach everyone in the room's potential, be great. We want all of our kids to be successful. The only way that happens is we start with education. Then our workforce will be better. And
Thank you, Dan.
my second, anyway.
Kevin?
There are 1,001 issues that confront us in this society. We can address them one by one, but if I have to choose 3 top issues right now, crime, homelessness, and financial security for our families. The pressures on the folks at home in terms of jobs and the opportunities within the jobs, all affected by the stressors we impose on our businesses that make it harder for them to train their workers, to hire their workers. That's a big issue. But behind that, we have a community where the state has failed in its job of establishing a criminal justice system, which holds people accountable for hurting other people. And when they call some crimes property crimes, if you're a poor person and your car is stolen, that's a loss of transportation, or your stereo is stolen, or your TV is stolen. That's a loss of your opportunity for entertainment. If we want to talk about being concerned about the poor, be concerned about the failure of this legislature to do something about so-called lower level crimes. We've got to be aggressive about that. And finally, homelessness, there's a pastiche of issues behind it. Mental health, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, jobs, housing, all of that needs to be addressed.
Anthony, please.
Thank you, Jeff. Education and workforce. I've been knocking on doors, talking to thousands of voters in the district, and people are hungry. We're facing a labor shortage in this area that we haven't seen in years. And it gets down to workforce and training development. I manage an adult attainment and credit for prior learning grant. Do you know the population of folks utilizing credit for prior learning, going back to school? It's not students who are coming right out of high school. It's adults, 25 to 50 years old, who are coming back into the post-secondary system, wanting to retrain, retool, and get back in the workforce. We need a strong workforce ready to meet the needs of our workforce here in Oregon, and I'm uniquely positioned to do that.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, I been out hundreds of thousands and really talking to community about issues within the community. I think some of the larger ones are, of course, affordability. As Oregonians, we're hitting inflation. We're all seeing that in the so that's huge. But I also believe that the homeless issue, as many of us have already talked about, is also a huge issue with times. And there's no accountability. We have had poor leadership, and leadership has not hold anybody accountable, even on the situations that we've had with homeless issues. Personally, calling the police, we get a call back for and this isn't a matter of stealing our vehicle, because it's a petty crime, and no one really seems to care about the leadership, in leadership, and there's no accountability. There's nothing that a lot of times that the law enforcement can actually do, and we're seeing that unfortunately take a massive negative way, and not just the actual, it's all the way around.
Thank you.
Business owners and etc.
Thank you, Tracy. At this point, we are going to open it up to candidates asking each other one question. Each candidate asks their question, then have 1 minute to respond, and then we will move on down the line. And we will start at the end with Tracy and move from there. So Tracy, please.
Yes, so Mr. Medina, excuse me. On your campaign website, you state that you crafted the state's entire budget on behalf of Governor Brown. As Governor Kate Brown has significantly raised taxes and fees on small business and Oregonians, such as through the cat tax and the hidden sales tax, do you intend to continue your boss legacy of policies that have raised the cost of living for Oregonians?
I do not intend on introducing any revenue raising measures in the 2022 session. The corporate activity tax was also a bill passed in the 2019 session, and I worked for the state's chief financial office to craft the 17-19 biennium. So in my working of the state's budget, I did not fund the corporate activity tax, and two, it was for the 17-19 biennium.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Now you have an opportunity to ask Tracy a question.
Tracy, when people break the law, they often face criminal charges, not limited to fines or jail time. You've called for abortions to be illegal and was thrilled at the overturning of Roe v. Wade. What criminal charges would you like to see placed on women who get an abortion?
Well, first of all, I am pro-life. I do think that life is to be cherished and protected. I am endorsed by Oregon Right to Life. However, I do believe that the conversation in Oregon is that that we can all agree that abortion and killing a baby up until birth is killing and murdering. And I don't believe, in fact, I know that Oregonians also believe that that is ridiculous. And we need to have the legislation come together for a actual common sense on abortion.
Thank you. Now, Kevin's in a unique situation because he doesn't have an opponent here. However, I do think it's fair. If Kevin, you want to ask yourself a question.
All right, Kevin, why the heck are you running for the legislature? You were freed from this years ago. And so the answer is this is the year that somebody has to do something. My wife and I talked about this when the redistricting plan came out. And we looked at it, it said Kaiser and North Salem, no incumbent who's running for office, open seat. And my representative, who happens to be a Democrat, called me and said, Kevin, the demographics look pretty reasonable. It's only a 4% Democrat edge and that sort of thing. Susanna and I talked about it. She's the only one who has to give me permission to do this. And we agreed. The kids are grown up. My law firm is doing fine. I've got 5 lawyers who really do all the work. I get to take the credit. And isn't this time to get back in to do something at the legislature where we can fix things, change things, make things better? So it took us a luncheon conversation for me to say, I'll do it. I didn't ask for permission from any lobby group or any other group out there. The point being that it's a matter of your conscience and how you reach out to your constituents, and then you need to convince people to come along with you. And Susanna, who my lifelong partner, is the one who also encouraged me to do this. And so here I am.
Kevin, thank you. Great question to yourself. I've often wondered the same thing. People who run for, so thank you. Dan, you have an opportunity to
All right.
hold back.
All right. Given that small business owners in Oregon are struggling to find qualified employees because the state is ranked 46 nationally in education outcomes and has the second highest tax burden, what do you say to small business owners like myself for voting to lower education standards and propose a cat tax?
So I think that's a great question. What I would say is, number one, we're actually not the statistics you suggest. The Tax Foundation actually says that Oregon is number 15th in total taxation, not number 49th. And we're the one of 14 states that actually require 24 credits for graduation. So the data is skewed in terms of what states are actually calling a high school graduate. That's especially important when we look at Mississippi, how many credits they currently require. Now, the bigger question is, what are we doing to fix the problem? Einstein once said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We basically said, stop the hypocrisy, stop saying what we're doing is right, and actually figure out what we should be teaching the kids. The report just came out this past about 3 weeks ago, and it actually laid out some things that I think most people would agree with. Actual financial literacy being included in the things we teach. Imagine that. Civics, oh my goodness, more math, more science. we're making progress, but the first thing is when you're in a hole, you stop digging. And then you build yourself out. And that's what we're trying to do in education.
Thank you. Well, for that.
So my question is, we are living in very turbulent times and the trust in elections is important. My question is, do you believe that the 2020 election was actually fair across the country?
I think the results are what they are. And I think it was fair. I accept that. Again, we live in America and whatever the results are, we have to live with.
That's the answer.
And but you know, again, I look at it as we have to take advantage of opportunities. Improving our education to prepare people to work in our workforce. We have to coach, I say coach, teach, work with all the kids, all the players. You have to be involved no matter what their background is to make them successful. The goal is to be successful. So it'd be nice to have bills that would be positive in the business sector. It would be nice to be positive for our children that socially they don't have to be challenged from K to 5 about their social interaction or who they are. It should be about reading math. I have 6 granddaughters. I want them to learn how to read and write about if they're a boy or girl.
Thank you. TJ and then Tom.
Thanks. Hi, Tom. So my question for you is, you know, when the PAC Trust was preparing to develop the property for Costco, the council indicated that they were going to oppose it. And the city attorney indicated that that would be a foolhardy mission and would end up costing the city thousands in the attorney bills for PAC Trust. I'm just wondering, you guys still pursued that path, and do you think that that was a wise path to do, just to drive up the cost of development and try to prevent Costco from developing that property, PAC Trust from developing that property?
The city attorney gave me different advice within the attorney-client privilege, but I will tell you, TJ, that I ended up voting for it. I voted against it the first time because I did have some concerns that were legitimate under LUBA, transportation and the removal of the white oaks, and that's under the city council laws as well. I am a lawyer. When the Court of Appeals said those are not valid reasons, the decision came back to us to make a decision. And I voted for it the second time, and it's out there. And I am pretty sure that the developers of that place are not really losing money because we delayed for about 6 months before they did their project. I was at Costco yesterday. I like to go there. I'm a member of there. And so I don't regret my first vote, and nor do I regret my second vote in favor of the project.
Thank you, Tom. And you have a question for TJ.
Sure. If you are elected, TJ, will you commit to voting against any restriction on an Oregon woman's access to and right to an abortion if that is her choice?
You take the oath that you're going to uphold the Constitution, right to life is one of the first things that's in there. And I don't know how you pick and choose and say, okay, I'm going to uphold this part of the Constitution, not that part of the Constitution. And I think that there are some, when we talk about changes, you know, you can, in Oregon, you can have an abortion up until delivery. And I think that that's something that a lot of people feel, they're surprised when they hear that. And I think that if in representing House District 19, I think overwhelmingly the folks there in my conversations with them would support some changes there. So I would be listening to the voters, talking to my constituents, and making sure that what I vote is a reflection on their values.
So with that, we are at the conclusion. So each candidate will have 1 minute to provide some closing remarks. And we will start again at this end with Tom.
Thank you very much. I always love going first. I grew up in a Presbyterian minister's household in Chicago, and our daily conversation was not about the sports teams, but it was about how are we going to make the world a better place? I've tried to do that with my family. I tried to do that on the city council, and I will also do that as a representative. I am nominated by not only the Democrats, but by the Independent and Party and the Working Families Party. I have current relative experience of 8 years on the city council, including working with the chamber members on various projects, such as the recent revision of the system development charges that I chaired the committee that met for almost 18 months with a number of chamber members. I got things done on the city council, and I will get things done as House District 19 representative in the legislature. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. TJ?
Thank you. It's interesting as I go around and knock on doors and talk to people, most people tell me that the state is headed in the wrong direction. And when I ask them if they would like to see the legislature become more partisan and more liberal, they say the answer to that is no. And that was really what kind of drove me to run, that and the redistricting, which I felt like was a bully move. There's already a super majority. You don't need to just extinguish every last potential for a different voice. Sometimes having a diversity of views makes for better policies. And so I believe that the people of House District 19 are looking for somebody who's moderate, that can work with people on both sides. I did that when I was on city council, looking to reach across the aisle and work with people on the other side. Even though it's a nonpartisan, you still have people who have widely different views than yours in that body, and took advantage of working with Councilor Tesler and then Councilor Bennett to make sure that their views were heard. And I appreciate your support.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to be here, and I want to thank Dan for running. I'm not going to lie, I hope he continues to have ample time to do all the things that you're doing to help the community, not in the legislature. But over the last 20 years, I've actually last 30 years, I've spent about 20 years in the military and 10 to 15 years, depending on various councils and public service opportunities. And I think right now we need people who understand the legislative process and have a track record of being able to bring bipartisan legislation to the end. As a chair for 5 years of a committee that had 4 and 4 and then 3 and 3, never having a majority in my own committee, we actually passed some of the most substantive reform legislation for emergency management, response, and recovery ever. If given the opportunity, I hope to continue that. I just again appreciate the opportunity to serve this community and look forward to the conversations in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Dan?
My whole life has been about helping out our community. I was raised that way, and I'm always going to be pro-business, always support businesses the way they function. I love to see people that start new businesses because I like to see them successful, because that's the fun part. It's being successful and watching people come through the door and hiring and being productive. Also, I'm going to be supporting our police officers and recruiting, making sure that we have enough police officers for public safety, because we need that. We support education, because education is our future children. It's our workforce. That's how our community works, is by being well-educated kids that have the opportunity to go out and be the best they can be. I'm also going to be active in homelessness, making sure I call what's next thing. We get them to recovery, but what's next? Where are they going next? And that's what we need to help in our community. I'm going to be an advocate for that. But, you know, again, I need your endorsement. I need your support. I need your encouragement, and I need your prayers. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak today and being here today.
Thank you, Dan. Kevin?
I appreciate everyone being here today. I want to take you back. Susanna and I are both foreign service kids. We met at the University of Virginia. And when Susanna agreed to marry me, I thought, well, we're in Virginia, right? She said, so let's adopt a home state. And we studied up on the 50 states. We got down to Washington and Oregon as the 2 states that most intrigued us as a place to live and have a family and work. Then we chose Oregon because Tom McCall was saying, visit, but don't stay. Thought that's really cool. So I came out here, I explored. I remember calling Susanna as I was driving back from Cannon Beach. In those days, it was still the phone booth, saying, what a beautiful place. This is the place to come. We came here. We've never regretted it. But one of the things we've seen is the beauty of Oregonians and the beauty of our state is being despoiled by a government which is failing to help us be what we can be, restricting our businesses too much, taxing all of us too much. Worse of all, not being sensitive to improving and protecting our environment. There's a lot to do, and that's why I'm running.
Thank you, Kevin. Anthony?
Thank you all for being here today. I'm passionate about the Mid-Willamette Valley. I purposely raising my family in the Mid-Willamette Valley, born and raised in the Mid-Willamette Valley. I'm also endorsed by the Independent Party of Oregon. I look forward to serving each and every one of our constituencies in this district, and I look forward to meeting with all of y'all, with the chamber, at your businesses, during the legislative session, in between sessions. And I strongly believe to go back to serving small businesses should not be a partisan issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Tracy?
Thank you everyone for being here and thank you for having me. You know, I think when I initially decided to run, a lot of things started running through my head, as you can imagine, but you know, I for one am tired of seeing the career politician. I'm tired of seeing politicians who don't understand the people and are not fighting for the people and are not fighting for you as business owners and for constituents of who they're supposed to represent. And in my head, why is that? Do they not know the issues? Are they not in rooms? Are they not speaking to people? All of these things kind of floated through my mind. And I truly look forward to serving the constituents of District 22 because I truly believe that not only am I working hard now, but I will work hard. I'm a business owner, a mom of 3, and I truly believe that I'm the right fit to actually serving people and not being a the mess that has been created.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the House candidates. We will now shift over to the Senate candidates. Thank you for all the House candidates. Hopefully you guys can stay. I know, Paul, you might have to bail out of here. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Hopefully everyone else can stay. There'll probably be an opportunity for some questions and answers if we have time here at the end. But with that, since Paul is leaving, Paul, thank you for coming and joining us today. Appreciate your time. So now we will shift over to the Senate candidates. Same exact kind of format, self-introductions for 1 minute, and then we'll go up and down with the 3 questions. And with that, Deb, you start.
Well, good morning. My name is Deb Patterson. I'm state senator in District 10. I want to thank the Salem Chamber for setting up this forum today. I am incumbent. I'm a Democrat and have the nomination of the Independent Party as well. Having directed an international health organization for over a decade, I've seen other countries provide high quality healthcare for all for less. Before I became health administrator, I went to seminary to become a minister. I've been ordained for 30 years now. And as clergy, I saw so many people lose their homes and struggle with medical bills and access to care. That's why I ran for this office. And after I was elected, I was named chair of the Senate Health Committee. And the cost of healthcare continues to be a burden on families, particularly small business owners who can't purchase that large group health insurance and our economy as a whole. That's why I championed legislation that expands access to healthcare in Oregon, capped the price of insulin at $75 per month, and created an accountability process for the cost of prescription drugs. I'm also proud to share that with my colleague, Representative Evans, and other legislators in the year, we were able to secure in this district over $35 million for Senate District 10, from funding for a homeless navigation center, funding for chariots to electrify their Lancaster area, Project Turnkey, Center for Hope and Safety. I am really proud of the work that I've accomplished in less than 2 years, and I look forward to the coming conversation. Thanks. Sorry, I'm a minister. What can I say?
This is not.
It's not fun cutting someone off either. So, Raquel, please.
Good morning, and thank you to the chamber and for hosting us and for all of the candidates who are here this morning. For those of you I have not met. My name is Raquel Moore Green, and currently I am the state representative to House District 19, which is South Salem, Turner, and Almsville. This election cycle, I have decided to serve that my talents would best be served in the Senate, and that's Senate District 10. The majority of Oregonians think that our state is headed in the wrong direction. We have record high crime rates, unchecked homelessness, reduced graduations, high school graduation standards. And if I can put a footnote to that, the new proposal is that for high school, you need only have Algebra 1 as your math requirement to graduate. We have a long time established business moving out of state due to high taxes and excessive regulations in the nation. No one party has all the answers. For far too long, one party rule has left our communities behind. It's time that we make a course correction. We need balance in the Senate, and I am the candidate that will produce common sense legislation that benefits all Oregonians. There are two things I want you to walk away with today about my candidacy. First and foremost, I have received the endorsements of NFIB, the Oregon State Chamber of Commerce, the Oregon Hispanic Business Association, the Defend Small Businesses, Oregon Farm Bureau, and Oregon Nurseries PAC and Ag PAC. Additionally, I received a score of 100% from the Oregon State Chamber of Commerce related to key votes impacting the business community.
Thank you, Raquel. Is it Richard or Rich? What do you prefer?
Either one's fine.
Okay, Richard.
Morning, I am Richard Walsh. I'm an attorney. I've had my business practice here in Salem and Kaiser for the last 30 years. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I've been a member of the Kaiser Chamber of Commerce for decades. I have been a liaison to the Chamber of Commerce. I have been a recipient of the Chamber of Commerce Award for President's Award. I've got pretty tight connections with the business community because I am a community business member. My small firm has 8 members. We deal with all the regulations and 8 employees. We deal with all the same regulations that all of you have to deal with, all the same taxes, all the same loss of supplies, all the same deals with trying to hire new staff. I've been trying to hire staff now basically to replace me. I've been trying like crazy. Oh my goodness, look at that, for quite a while. And I haven't been able to find some. Anyway, I have 5 children, including 1 foster child and my fiance, her child. And my fiance is here in the back, by the way, Allison. And without her help, I wouldn't be here. So here I am.
Good morning. Thanks for getting up early to sit through hearing all these people talk about politics, et cetera. But my name's Kim Thatcher. I moved to Kaiser 31 years ago. And though I have lived in 6 different states, I have been an Oregonian most of my life, and I've never seen so many things wrong at once in our state. And we can do so much better. It's getting harder every day for people to make ends meet. And, 30 years ago, I started my business in the Salem area, raised my family here, 3 of my kids graduated from McNary. But the ever increasing, the accumulation of red tape and increased taxes are crushing not only our small businesses, farmers, but also our families. Many small businesses have been forced to close because of mandates from the governor. It is becoming less safe in our neighborhoods. Kids aren't being properly educated and people can't afford the cost of living, all because of a couple decades accumulation of bad policies. And we can turn that around. We can work together and make our state better.
Thank you. So we will start with the questions and we will start back with Deb and then come back and forth, snake back and forth like we did with the House candidates. So with that, first question, considering the significant increases in the federal funds to the 21-23 budget versus the 2019-21 budget, would you be in favor of seeking new revenue streams for the state to sustain the new programs introduced during the global pandemic?
Thanks, John.
Well,
The budget during the pandemic was put together intentionally so that the funding would not be ongoing. The American Rescue Plan Act, not perpetual aid. I don't know that any new programs per se were actually created. Certainly any new programs, it would depend on the program, whether or not I would support them. I'd have to read the bill before continuing to support. I don't support placing any additional burden on the backs of our small business communities or our working families.
Thank you. Go.
New revenue streams, i.e. new fees and taxes are not warranted at this time on our businesses. You've seen over 100% increase in your taxes over the last 10 years. The state has experienced record revenue this past biennium. The poor management decisions by the supermajority to continue to spend and expand government needs to be stopped. The legislature should have used common sense and set aside this record revenue for future spending. Our state budget currently sits at $121 billion. That's billion with a B. And the expansion of the budget by the one-time federal dollars to help during the pandemic must be seen as only one-time funding. The programs set in place were for temporary help, not permanent.
Thank you. Richard?
I also don't see any need for any new taxes. And I do believe that the legislator did a pretty good job of using the ARPA funds and other short-term federal subsidies for short-term projects, patching holes, taking care of problems that have passed due, and not creating ongoing obligations. To the extent that there are new programs, if there are any, the first thing I would want to do is to see, well, do we really need those before we have to think about new revenue streams? And if we did, for some reason, think that there was new revenue streams, the last thing I'd want to do as a business owner is to have a new tax, especially on businesses. Well, we were faced with that problem in Kaiser when I was there. And I was on the city council, and we needed a new city hall and we needed a new police station because of the need of the police officers to have better supplies and facilities. And we got that money, not through taxes, but by being innovative and by fostering business. We created Kaiser Station, and it was because we needed money for things like the police station. So there's ways to generate money that does not involve raising taxes. And I would look for that, opportunities like that in the legislature.
Okay.
Well, there is one good program that I can think of right off the top of my head that was started during the pandemic. And I do think it needs to be continued because we have, as a workforce for people, parents who have disabled children is diminishing and they can't find people to help them out. And they're taking care of their kids and they can't afford to work because they're doing this caretaking. That program needs to be looked at because that's offsetting costs to the state and there's no other choice for these parents, and those types of things should be explored. But we have right now record state revenue. We had the cat tax flip on right during the pandemic. We do not need to burden voters with more taxes. And that cat tax that was passed, it was done after the voters rejected it. We have to set our new priorities and have education, public safety, and cutting the costs of doing business and living in the state as priorities.
Okay, we will start with you and work back the other direction now with this next question. As a member of the Oregon Legislature, would you be willing to break away from your political party, vote in favor or against a bill which will potentially harm or adversely hurt small businesses?
I like to prioritize my conscience and then my constituents and then my party. Because I have been in that situation where once upon a time, the House had a Republican majority. And that was my first year in the House. And not only did I break away from my party, I dissented from the Speaker of the House's bill, which was the Republican. And all the kinds of promises were being made, all kinds of pressure was being brought to bear. This was my first session, keep in mind. And I have clearly demonstrated over the years that I stand for small businesses and I will stand for my constituents above partisan influence. Oregon needs to be affordable again. It's not right now. And these taxes and burdensome regulations have made Oregon one of the most expensive states to do business in. And we need to protect them and not be listening to our parties. And that is where priorities must lie.
Thank you. Sure.
So I'm an attorney and I represent clients, and I know what it's like to find out what the clients need and to represent them in court of law or in negotiations. And that's my guiding principle. So I'm not going to be swayed by party politics. In fact, that's one of the main reasons I ran, is I'm kind of tired of all this bickering and all this partisanship. And we want to, try to get back to the Oregon way of getting together and building things and getting things done. I have a proven record of being independent and voting my conscience. Even I've been a very strong record of voting my conscience, and even if it is against pressure. I think I have the record. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I have the record of the most no votes when everyone else went yes, and most yes votes when everyone else went no on the Kaiser City Council in the 10 years I was there. I'm pretty sure that record still stands. And in one of those votes, I think was the Kaiser Station Road Plan. I continuously objected to that. I don't know if anyone's been there, but that's not my plan. That's the one I voted against. But in any event, it's important to do what you need to be driven by your values and by what your constituents need, and not by party politics. And I will stand by those values in the legislature.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Jeff. My voting record reflects that I do cross party lines. And my goal for legislation affecting small business is to always understand the impacts, whether they're good or bad, and to anticipate the unintended consequences of legislation prior to voting. I wouldn't vote in favor of legislation that would harm our businesses. We would certainly vote for legislation that would help our businesses. We're a small business community, and for that matter, we're a small business state. Business is the backbone of our state's economy, and when we layer on fees, rules, and regulations, we inhibit the growth. And in turn, the revenue for the state the revenue to the state produced by our tax structure. And it's counterintuitive to me that we continue to inhibit growth when it creates more jobs, more individuals and families have money for a roof over their head. They have food on the table and clothes on their backs, as well as creating a stronger tax base.
Yep.
Yes, well, actually, I was willing to break away from my political party, and I will continue to do so. I voted several times with across the aisle with my colleagues, because I sat there and listened to them very carefully. They made compelling arguments, and I did vote across the aisle. For example, I voted against Senate Bill 139, which would have increased taxes on small businesses in the 2021 session. I did not feel that was right, so that was a no vote for me. I was the only Democrat who designated American Rescue Plan Act funds to both the Salem Chamber of Commerce for Small Business Relief and to the Monmouth Independence Chamber of Commerce for Small Relief. When Tom sent me that letter, I immediately replied yes, and I've been out visiting such as 40 businesses in 40 days, right after the long session, after the short session, back to business. I've been out to businesses this week talking about the paid family medical leave and the rules, and how that's some of those rules are negatively impacting businesses, and then also going to ribbon cuttings. And I'm just really excited that the business community is and continues and will be very vibrant in our communities.
I'll tell you what, it is tough. I hate interrupting somebody. It is miserable for me. For whatever reason, I think it's probably because I took a bump head a few times with my dad. I interrupted him a few times as a kid, so it is difficult. So thank you all for abiding by the yellow-red cards. Thank you. The final question, and Deb, we'll start with you and work our way back. Earlier this year, Intel, one of the largest employers in the state, announced that they were going to build a factory in Ohio, as opposed to their state of Oregon here, their home state. Over the past decade, Oregon has become far less attractive state to own and manage a business. What types of policies would you support to make Oregon a more business-friendly state?
I think I'm going to push back against that just a little bit. I know that Amazon opened a warehouse not south of here not too long ago. They're completing the building of one up in Woodburn. They just announced this week recently that they're opening several data centers in Morrow County, which will bring a lot of economic growth and benefits to that community. What I really am more concerned about, though, is ensuring that members in this room are secure and growing, rather than corporations who are already succeeding, and like Intel, and might be competing against our local businesses here. I don't want companies like Intel to be able to play by a different set of rules than our small businesses, which puts members of this chamber and other chambers across the state and Oregonians at a disadvantage. New businesses are opening in our area all the time, and I'm really excited about this. I truly believe, I've heard a lot of negatives about how terrible Oregon is. I believe in the state. I believe in the businesses in the state, and I believe in Oregon's future.
Thank you, Deb. Kel?
In speaking with business owners ranging from manufacturing to agriculture, it seems that we're at a point in time that we, the larger body of Oregonians, need to have conversations about land use, tax structure, federal and state regulation, duplication, and natural resources. These are difficult discussions. However, there are ones that I am more than willing to initiate with the goal to ask, where are we today? Where can we better utilize these mechanisms that we have in place? And what changes need to be made to help businesses grow in Oregon? Earlier this year, OBI hosted a forum on manufacturing. And one of the statistics that has stood out to me is that if the manufacturing industry grew by 10% in the state, it would create enough revenue for the salary of 1,500 teachers. We must think about how to expand our tax base, and the easiest and fastest way to do that is to grow all of our business sectors.
Yeah, I'd also like to push back a little bit on the doom and gloom scenario. Intel's still here. Yes, they built the other ones in Ohio, and that's a shame that we missed that, but Intel's still here. Their base is still here. Amazon is building here. We got data centers going up, just like Senator Andersen was talking about. And I have a business here and I love it here, you know, so I mean, I don't think it's all terrible. I do think there are some things we can do to make things even better. One of the things that I think is impacting us the most right now, and kind of like the downtown area, is this homelessness issue. And I know we've talked about that in regards to other contexts, but it affects business. It affects business when you have homeless in your front doorsteps, when you're trying to open your business in the morning. And I think that I've worked really hard to get the solution to that problem, or to work with Church at the Park. I'm on their advisory board, and to work with them in order to get the people out of downtown, out of the parks, out of the right of ways, and into safe housing, or not housing, but safe 10 by 10 shelters where they can start their life anew. And there's a way that they can do that. I think there's other things we can do. The small business development centers are really great. Support Business Oregon, support Travel Oregon. My time's up, but there's a lot of things we can do, and I would continue to do that to support small businesses.
I've seen the state do a lot better than it's doing. And it's not just Intel deciding to expand outside of our state. There are many businesses that are just up and leaving. And I'm hearing it every day in my email. And it's because there's just one too many straws coming at them. Just drip, drip, drip. Too much. And that's why we have to improve our workforce issues with education, public safety, and especially homelessness, and funding the police, and not shackling their ability to take care of the crime that's out there. And stopping the local inflation. I think we've had devastating policies for too many of our small businesses, especially that have been accumulating the past several years. And we have to put a stop to that and start reversing. Business seems to be the first to be taxed and the last to be hurt. And this has to stop. We need to prioritize the economy, education, and public safety.
Zachary, I was noticing here, I'm going to just pause for a second. Do we have time for candidate asking each other questions, or was that okay? Perfect. We're actually, yeah, we're in a few minutes, so I just want to make sure that this is something. Thank you. So in this portion, we will do similarly to what we did with candidates, where each candidate can ask the other a question, 1 minute response, and down the line. With that, Kim, why don't you start us off?
All right, Democratic politicians have been in control of the state for decades. Our education system is so bad, we look at graduation rates in order so kids can graduate. Taxes on businesses are some of the highest in the country, and the cost of doing high. Crime and murder rates are out of control, homelessness is rampant, and now a $57 billion income and payroll tax increase for you, our constituents, for an experimental government health care scheme being proposed by Democratic politicians for the next session. All of these things happening to our state have transpired under complete Democratic politician control. Why should Senate District 11 voters send yet another Democratic politician to run the state?
That's a very good question. First of all, again, I don't believe it's all doom and gloom as you describe. I think there's a lot of good things going on in the state right now. But I would say that because we have this kind of, my opinion, somewhat messed up two-party system that is kind of controlling the state. We need somebody, Salem, this chamber needs somebody in the majority party to advocate for their rights, advocate for their interests, have somebody in the room. I think Paul Evans, Senator Paul Evans alluded to it in his initial statements that you need someone in the room that is making the decisions, and like it or not, that party is the Democratic Party in Oregon, and is probably going to be that way through to the indefinite future. So this group, this Chamber of Commerce, needs their advocate in the room where they make those kind of decisions, so bad decisions don't get made. It doesn't matter if somebody agrees with every single thing that you want, if they're not in the room where the decisions are made, if they're not making impact because they're not in the caucus where the decisions are made. You need an advocate that will be there for you where it counts, where the decisions are made. And I think I would be the candidate to do that.
Now you might not do that.
So Kim, as you know, Oregon state attorneys questioned whether your company's invoices to the state were legitimate. And Marion County Circuit Court Judge Prowl found that your company intentionally destroyed evidence, engaged in willful disobedience of court orders, and showed a willingness to deceive and an effort to cover up, and ordered you to pay $63,010 as a sanction. Also, when your officers in your company were asked about the evidence destruction charges, they both asserted their Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. Did not answer. You currently serve on the Joint Committee of Legislative Audits, and you are the chair of the Commission on Transparency. You also portray yourself as a financial watchdog. Your company also continues doing business with the state of Oregon. As your role as a senator, legislative auditor, chair of transparency, and financial watchdog, what would you do, if anything, to protect the taxpayers if you found out that the state of Oregon was continuing to contract with another firm, if it was also found guilty of these types of offenses?
Well, first of all, accusations were made and you're twisting the truth. And that shows desperation. And the fact is that my company had a contract dispute against ODOT because they weren't paying. I can tell you a whole long story about that, but I only have, and we did settle. And the reason we settled is because we dropped the case at the end. We could not keep fighting. And so instead of fighting paying for some of the defense costs for the state, fighting that, we ended up paying the $60 some odd thousand. And I do still serve. I have. There's really a strange thing to say that a person is guilty of something when accusations are made. Believe me, they were going back and didn't hear the other side of that story at all. But what he's trying to do is deflect from his agenda to continue to sit in that room with his caucus leaders and caucus and continue to double down on the things that have devastated our state.
Thank you, Jeff. Senator Patterson, in the 22 session, you voted 100% along party lines. How is that representative of Salem and the business community?
Thank you for that question. It's inaccurate. I've just mentioned to you several times that I crossed the aisle to vote with the opposing, with the opposition party, and that's inaccurate. You yourself voted 78% of the time for bills that were passed. Only 40 bills out of the entire session, that long session, which had thousands of bills, were completely on party lines with no bipartisan.
May I asked about the 22 session, not the 21 session. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Well, as you know, very few bills were passed that time. And again, almost all of the bills that were passed during this last session had bipartisan support.
Deborah, please.
Oh, right. I was thinking, is time for coffee?
We're getting close.
It's well known that you describe yourself as pro-life. As a legislature, you have sponsored several bills, I believe 8, that would restrict access to abortion, including multiple 20-week abortion bans like those we are seeing in other states right now since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Under which circumstances do you support a woman's access to an abortion?
I am pro-life, and I don't want any woman to be suicidal while pregnant. I would like to see a world where abortion is unthinkable, regardless of whether or not it's legal. The choice for pregnant women of all ages should be supportive and healing, whether they keep or they give up their babies. I've met so many women that have aborted babies early in life who now have regrets, and that's just not healthy.
So we now will just have a 1-minute closing remark from each of the candidates, and we will start with you.
Well, thanks again to the Salem Chamber for hosting this event, and to everyone who asked questions later. That you will be asking questions, I know. Thanks for showing up so early. I know we have a lot of work to do in the legislature, and there are many pressing issues. We heard about them this morning that face our community, from homelessness, a shortage of affordable housing, supporting our business community, public safety, and making healthcare more affordable. I believe that my extensive background in nonprofit management and healthcare administration and my accomplishments in the Senate have made me well equipped to continue to serve in Senate District 10. My husband and I live in South Salem. Our daughter and son are graduates of Salem Public Schools. I'm out every day in this district, which includes South and West Salem, downtown Salem, Four Corners, Monmouth and Independence, Turner and Amsville currently, although that is changing a little bit. I'm proud to have secured over $35 million for this district to start making a dent in the issues that we care about. And I look forward to continuing to serve this community in the coming years. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Deb. We're done.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you to the chamber and all of you who have participated. One of the things I did not get to share earlier was the direction that our state is headed in, and the majority of Oregonians believe that we are headed in the wrong direction. And the difference is clear. Our community and our state can no longer continue on a downward spiral of rampant crime. In Salem's homicide rate was up 42% in 2021. Our violent crime rate was up 15.4%, and arson was up 20.5%. That is not a welcoming community, whether it's to families who are moving here or to businesses who are doing business here. We have insufficient programs for our homeless, and students are unprepared for the workforce in college. Rules and regulations that inhibit our small businesses to grow and thrive. Or we can course correct and elect me to bring balance to our state Senate to begin the task of turning Oregon in the right direction. Safe streets and schools, students prepared to join the workforce and continue their formal education, and an atmosphere that welcomes and encourages businesses to grow and thrive. I ask for your support, and for those of you who live in Senate District 10, I ask for your vote this November. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
I want to end with the reasons I started, the reasons why I'm running for state Senate. And there's really 3 main categories. The first one is the issues, and there's a lot of issues, homelessness and affordable housing and campaign finance reform. And I want to really do more for seniors and not forget them as we make our decisions in other areas of government. There's all kinds of things that I'd like to work on those issues, but really that's not the whole picture. The more important, well, to me, the thing that motivated me the most is just my basic values. Is from a kid, I've always been taught by my family to do the best you can with what you got while you got it. And that involves a certain amount of what your bandwidth is at the time. So when I'm in high school, all I had was a little bit of bandwidth and I was able to, wow, that's fast. Okay. So, little bit of bandwidth. And so I did Meals on Wheels. And when I got in college, I did more things, and I'll describe those later if you want. I have a resume that my assistant has there that if you want to look at all the different, but bottom line is that you do the best you can with what you got while you got it. And the third reason that I'm here is because I want to put an end to this vitriol, I want to do my part to try to return Oregon to statesmanship and collegial relations and to get things done together. And I don't really care that much about the wedge issues that are national. Those, I want to focus on the bread and butter stuff here that you need. I want to get our fair share of roads and bridge money and make sure we have clean water from San Am and make sure that we've got, our fair share of recreational facilities or libraries or whatever it is, things that people really need bread and butter. And people can get excited about the wedge issues all they want. But if I'm representing this committee and this community and this business community, I want to bring back something. I want there to be something for you to see for what I've done.
Thanks, Richard. Okay.
I want Oregon to come back to being this place where people live, work, play, and thrive, where industry and ingenuity rule the day. And people can enjoy the fruits of their labor. And we can only do that when we have balance. The best session that I've ever participated in within the House, I don't remember what year it was, but it was split. 30 Democrats, 30 Republicans. I think somebody whispered something.
11.
11. Okay, that was the best because the two sides were forced to come together and anything extreme on each edge fell off. And we have people now, just in the past few years, like Senator Peter Court, I would consider a moderate. He was Senate president, is the Senate president, and he couldn't even stand up to, what was it referred to as the goofy ideas of the Democratic caucus. So we have to bring back balance, and the way to do that is to bring back more balance. We need more Republicans in there.
Thank you, Kim. So at this moment, we have a few minutes to open it up to questions from the audience. That said, got a hand up already, we'll get there. It would be great if we could be specific to our questions to certain candidates and their opponent in these situations, because what happens here is this group has an opportunity, once we thank the candidates and release them, we have an opportunity as members to take a position, not take a position, when he's neutral, and take that recommendation to the board. So with that in mind, we have a few minutes. Saw a hand back there by Jonathan. So Jonathan, would you please?
Jonathan Castro, Chamber board member. Came to this country with my family for economic mobility. Came here when I was 7, and when I was in high school, I got into a very toxic relationship. So here we are, I'm 28, 11 years later from that, and I feel now like I'm in a toxic relationship with our state. We have the dumbest kids in the country, very unfriendly business environments, very high crime rates. And a lot of my friends who went into business and were successful, they're leaving the state. And it's very sad. Here I am at a crossroads where I have to ask myself, do I want to stay in the state? Personally, I'm community made. I don't consider myself self-made. I'm made by the beautiful community here. And it's really sad, but as I looked at who's running, I came into an individual who I feel very inspired and feel like there's still hope. That individual is Kevin Mannix. He brings a lot to the table. And we had an event with the Latino business community where just about every business owner and online cash drive came out and heard him. And let me tell you, Kevin, we are really excited. A lot of us are putting our trust in you. My question to you is, what the hell do we do? You need to say, what's the plan and how can we support you?
1 minute.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
The dynamic here is Vera Katz and David Dix recruited me to run for the House of Representatives, saying, Kevin, you're a conservative Democrat, and we need you in our caucus. We need you to get elected so we can have some balance in the caucus. And I agreed. The deal I made was procedurally, I would be with the caucus on procedural matters. But the vote was to be my conscience and my constituents. Now, years later, when Vera was no longer there and David was no longer there, I found myself incapable of remaining in that caucus because I saw the direction that it was headed. I left the legislature, and the first week I was out, I became a Republican. But I still know how to speak Democrat and I know how to speak Republican. And the point of this whole process, I think, the hope that we have for the future is for some of us to resist the oppression of the Portland leftist Democrats, reach out to other Democrats who are willing to work with us, and change the course of the state government through policy making at the legislature. And the one gift that I have is that I am capable of moving bills that are compromises, that are solutions for Oregonians. And that's where I was trying to inspire my Latino friends. We can make a difference.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for the question.
I've got a question for
Please.
Dan Patterson and Richard both. You kind of pushed back in terms of doom and gloom of this state, and that's surprising to me because I'm not sure where you guys are hanging out or what you're doing, but things aren't that great here. You know, you cited the Amazon buildings, things like that. Yeah, they're great. I encourage you, if you get time, take us a trip down to Arizona and look at how big the Amazon buildings are down there. And there's not one or two. There's a plethora of them. And I've been to them. Things like that are happening in other states, and they're not happening here. Things are not that great here. You know, I moved here 5 years ago, born and raised here, left for 17 years, came back 5 years ago because of an emotional attraction to a family business that I now own. And I'm not happy with the decision to move back here. This is not a thriving community. It's not a thriving state. To Mr. Castro's point, people are leaving here in droves. Lifelong friends of mine, right, that I was excited to come back here and hang out with are now like, hey, we're bailing, we're out of here. You know, and my wife and I talk all the time, depending on what happens in the next handful of years, are we on the 7-year plan to stay here and we move in 7 years when our kids are out of school, or we're on the 70-year plan and we can continue our business into the 4th and 5th generation. A lot of that has to do with what you all do in the next few years with your time if re-elected or elected. Can you tell me where do you think it's so good? What is so positive?
Well, I am out every day talking with people, and I see people like the new restaurant that just opened yesterday over in Polk County, in part of the district here, where people are really excited about the future here. I know there's a lot of problems. I talk with people about that, and you know, I believe we have the ability to work with those solutions. And so I'm clear about the pandemic was really hard on people. There's no doubt about it. And but there's a shortage of business spaces in some parts of our district because so many people are trying to locate into there. It may be that some people are leaving, but many people are coming too. So I'd like to.
So now it's but also for positive stuff.
I think we need to work for solutions to the problems that there always will be everywhere. I mean, but I do really feel very positive and hopeful that our communities will be safe and strong and thriving.
Richard,
I have a lot of hope in the future.
go ahead, Richard. Addressed as well.
Yeah, there are a lot. I think I said that there are things that are wrong, but there are some things that are right. And so, I mean, there are pandemics. There's inflation, there's gas problems. There is very much difficulty finding any labor supply. I've been struggling with all these same things. There's inflation, there's, oh my gosh, you know, there are struggles. A lot of them are national and not really in our control, but some of them are local, and some of the things I think we brought on ourselves. I haven't been a career politician yet. You know, I haven't served for 17 years. I haven't been in the legislature, so you know, I would like to take a shot at making things better. And so what I mentioned in my answer is that there are some things that I think we can do to try to make things even better than they are now. But I do see some bright spots. I do business here. You know, I see Rich Duncan's great things that he's built in the community in the last several years. I see things that have been done. You know, we got a new Chick-fil-A, right? I mean, there are things that have happened. I don't make flip out of it, but there are things still coming into the community. It's not a dead community. This chamber is a vibrant community-based business group. And it isn't all doom and gloom.
To your point, real quick, I just want to follow, you brought up Kaiser Station and in an effort to, I think, gain a tax base to pay for some things in the state badger, and I applaud you for that. But where I live in Arizona, every exit off the freeway was the equivalent of Kaiser Station. And we tout that we have Kaiser Station here, and that's one exit. I think there's 5 or 6 exits for Salem. That I think if the business community saw something like that, that would be something to really get excited about. That every exit off 5 looked like that. That's pretty cool.
So at the time, I only represented Kaiser and we did it.
Yep.
So give me a chance.
Thank you for the exchange. We have time for one more. Kurt, please.
This question is to Richard, Deb, and Nancy. First of all, thank you. Who are you, if the election were tomorrow, who are you voting for?
It's a question for Richard and who?
For the three of you, each of the three, the Democratic nominees that are.
Senate, just Senate or?
Just Senate, if yeah, we'll do Senate. This is just, if you want to include Anthony and Tom, that would be great.
Go ahead.
Okay, for the governor, is that what you're talking about? Tina Kotek.
I've enjoyed Tina Kotek.
I would hope that my Republican colleagues on this panel could answer the question as well. But I would vote for Tina Kotek.
Should have started with that.
I'll chime in too, as still on the line. I would also vote for Tina.
Okay, thank you. I think we had a jury discussion. Yep.
The question ought to be reversed for all candidates on the panel.
Okay. So let's start with Tracy and we'll come back this way.
Christine Drazen.
Christine Drazen.
Christine Drazen.
I was a solid Christine Drazen, and then I had a chance to meet Betsy Johnson in Central Oregon and talk to her. And that's a very sharp lady who understands Oregon politics. And I love her spirit. To me, she has this Oregon spirit about her. She would be a good representative of, but I'm still in the Christine Drazen camp.
Yep.
I think I'd like to echo the comments that TJ made, having had the opportunity to work with Senator Johnson in the legislature. She has a way about her that is very appealing. It's very straightforward. And there are no holds barred. There are several policy issues that I agree with her. And she does have that can-do spirit about her. I also had the opportunity to work with the Honorable Christine Drazen, who was then the House Minority Leader for the better part of the time that I've been in the House, beginning in 2019. And she too is a very strong leader. She's her style is very, very different from Senator Johnson. I think both of them have the ability to address the issues that we are facing. We have crime that is over the top. One of the things that Bill didn't mention was what business owners face with every day. I mean, if I could just go a minute,
Well,
just another second.
Sorry, we have to get you on. I apologize. Is there a candidate that you would be supportive of at this point?
At this point?
Yep. That's the question.
At this point, it would be Christine Drazen.
I have had the opportunity to work with all three of the candidates. I was not in the same chamber as Christine, but I'll just jump ahead and say I support Christine. I do like Betsy Johnson, but she did vote 97.5% of the time with her caucus and the extremist policies that we're now experiencing.
So with that, we are out of time for the candidates. I would just like to say on behalf of Chamber, thank you all for being here, being willing to sit and chat with us. And regardless of which side of the aisle it is, you were on, the Chamber has to maintain a relationship. Need it for businesses. I want to say thank you to all of you. And with that, have a great, thanks.